So I did a little different kind of a podcast today. It's maybe something I'll do more of if I find it interesting, right? That's the thing for me if I'm going to talk or try to share stories. Generally, I am talking to a guest, I'm interviewing somebody and listening to their story. But today I saw this movie, this new movie that just came out with Timothée Chalamet on Bob Dylan. And as I'm watching the movie, I'm thinking, T.C. Cannon is so inspired by this guy. And you can see correlations. I can because I understand and feel the relationships that T.C. Cannon had to his music. And so I did a little bit of a deep dive just to find out a few things about, Dylan and T.C. Cannon and how they connected and why and the things that would affect them, specifically T.C. Cannon. So, I think it might give you a sense of who this person was and why, especially when you look at T.C. Cannon's paintings and his drawings especially, because his drawings are, I think, some of the most personal, as they often are, with his own writings, his own poetry, in some cases even Dylan's drawings and or Dylan's songs and lyrics. In fact, Cannon's going to do a couple of paintings that are directly related to Dylan's lyrics. So before you go see the movie, the new movie on Dylan, you might want to listen to this podcast and just get a sense of T.C. Cannon and how he was affected, and might make it a little different for you. I know it did for me when I was thinking about it, watching it. Terrific movie, by the way. So I just saw the new Timothée Chalamet movie, A Complete Unknown, about Bob Dylan, and I'm watching the movie and I realize there's all this history I know about T.C. Cannon and Bob Dylan. In fact, I have all these drawings that T.C. Cannon did, and from as early as 67 to as late as 72. So the relationship is so interesting and important. I wanted people to kind of understand what I saw and felt at the moment I'm watching this movie, because I could feel Bob Dylan through Timothée Chalamet. I mean, he's a fantastic actor, but I could feel the angst, the pain, the time, the Vietnam War, all those kind of things going on. And I immediately thought back to T.C. Cannon. So, why is T.C. Cannon and Bob Dylan even in the same breath? Well, it has to do with T.C.'s really, I would say, almost an obsession with Dylan, in the sense that he really can understand and relate to this man's lyrics. And T.C. Cannon is this very unusual guy, right? He is a Kiowa and Caddo person that grows up with the Kiowa aesthetics, the warrior aesthetics. In fact, he's going to end up going to Vietnam. He's going to actually be volunteer with the 101th Airborne, and he's going to get 2 bronzes. He's going to be there from 1967, 1968, part of the Tet Offensive, and he gets out in 70. He finally finishes in 69, but is completely out in 70. I bring it up because his father and he, Walter, are put into the Warrior Society of the Kiowa Indians. So he has this duality that he wants to serve, wants to be patriotic, wants that sensibility, but he's a very sensitive man. He's an individual who's an artist, a poet, and a singer. So he can relate to Dylan in ways that other people can't. And in fact, there's a famous T.C. Cannon painting that shows him as a warrior as well, half of him, and then half of him is a soldier with a yellow beard, almost like a Custer type individual. So in this time frame, and I'll just kind of start it in 67, 66, that's really the time frame for T.C. Cannon, I think, where he starts to really get involved and think about Bob Dylan. And so he is going to be, he goes to San Francisco, the art school. He drops out of there. He's going to end up going to IAIA as well in Santa Fe. But in 66, when the Vietnam War is really going on, he being T.C. Cannon, really starts thinking about Dylan and Dylan's songs. And one of the songs that he talks about is It's All Right Mama, sighing, right? It's all right, Mama, I'm only sighing. And that's a Dylan song, right? It comes from the album of Bringing It Back Home. And this Dylan does this, the album in 65. T.C. Cannon does this in 1966. So in this painting that T.C. does, it's a big major painting. It shows Dylan it's a blonde-headed Dylan, but it's Bob Dylan, and all his different things that make up who he is, his names, what he feels like, what he's interested in, who he is. And so that's the first big major Dylan painting that T.C. Cannon does. And again, that's done in 1960. He does the painting in 66, but Dylan does it in 65. And that's the time frame, this bringing it back home, that Dylan starts to go from acoustic guitar to more electric guitar. And you see that happening at the Newport Festival in the movie. The next painting that T.C. Cannon does is a very interesting one. It's Mama and Papa Have Gone to Shiprock Blues. And that's the lyrics out of one of Dylan's songs. And it becomes somewhat of an iconic image and a transformational image for T.C. Cannon because it shows a couple, a Danae couple, older couple. One of them has a traditional blanket on, but she has on some sunglasses, and they're sitting in an area. They're just, have this sensibility of, a snapshot of them at that moment in time. The interesting thing about it from T.C. Cannon's painting perspective is he's gone from, art in general for him has gone to showing traditional people, but contemporarily, right? The sunglasses say, hey, we're still here. We're real people living in this world today. Now, that was done in 1966. And that piece really, that is a very iconic piece. It's in IAIA's collection. And again, coming directly from a Dylan song. Now, think about T.C. himself. If you were to go to his studio at this time, through his entire career, he would have been listening to Woody Guthrie. He would have been listening to a lot of Dylan. It would be playing, and he does his own music, and he does music and poetry that are related to T.C. Cannon, interpretation of Dylan. I have this one drawing, which is so interesting because it has the poetry of what Cannon sees and feels, and it's him as a self-portrait with his guitar. Now, the guitar is a very specific guitar. It's called 00018 Martin. It's a Martin guitar. A lot of interesting people played that guitar. So you have individuals like Woody Guthrie. That was his guitar. You also have Dylan himself uses that guitar when he does a duet with Johnny Cash, Girl from the North Country. And he uses that, again, 18 Martin. You also have individuals like Elvis Presley. Now, Elvis Presley, when he first started, used the 00018 Martin. So individuals that use this guitar, Cannon also has his own guitar. Now, his guitar comes from a person who he had rented from. He got the guitar from this individual. And a man named Michael Lord, who's a singer and a player and a guitar player, taught him how to play. So T.C. Cannon takes up the guitar. He also takes up the harmonica and really starts to learn and feel the sensibilities of that folk music, and specifically Dylan. And if you look at that guitar itself, it's interesting because it's kind of worn out. And part of it, some of it may come from his landlord, but apparently that T.C. Cannon really used it and strummed it hard, and it has certain marks on it that you would see from that's kind of striving for it. And it has a very noticeable kind of sensibility, right? It's a small guitar. It's made out of mahogany, and it has a predominant waist to it, to the guitar itself. And again, it's from the 1940s. So there was a famous exhibit actually at the Smithsonian, I think in 2019, where they exhibit this guitar in the show, which they should. It's an important component of who T.C. Cannon is, right? So he's using a guitar that his heroes use. It's a good, very good guitar. He's learning how to express himself through his music as well as through his lyrics and his poetry. And you look at like the piece that was a self-portrait, you can see how he sees himself. In fact, if you look at that image and you look at some of the T.C. Cannon drawings that he did of Dylan in 1972 and 1974, also there's one that's a very early piece in 1967. So right about the time he's going to Vietnam, you can see, I see at least, a sensibility even on how he sees himself compared to Bob Dylan. So it's this unique, group of circumstances that makes them both insanely well-known individuals. So T.C. Cannon is, he's going to die young, unfortunately. He's born in 1946 and he dies in 1978 in a car accident. He's only 31. He's like 3 months out from being 32. Yet he's going to change the way we interpret and see and understand Native arts, partially through this one Shiprock Blues piece, which really changes the tenor of how he himself sees art and being Native American. But it's also going to change the way that the world sees him. And he has, since his death, he's had lots of different retrospectives. There's been books on him. He even has a piece, which is Two Guns Arikara, which is in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It's a fantastic painting. I highly recommend you see it. But, he's in major museum collections, if they can get one. He didn't do that many paintings, quite frankly. So there's, very small amount of his large works out there. Luckily, I own a bunch of drawings. In fact, if you've ever tuned into any of my podcasts or different videos, you'll see in the background, including in this one, a bunch of T.C. Cannon drawings of all sorts of things. He did things like Custer, his Last Stand, and made comments about it, and Bigfoot at the great battle. We call it a battle, but the great problem that they had with Wounded Knee, which was in December 29th of 1890. And so he's aware of these historical facts and things that went on in Native art, but he sees it in his own way, very much like Dylan. Dylan changes the way that folk music is listened to and portrayed. He becomes this huge, dominant figure in the same time that T.C. Cannon is really starting to take off as an artist. And one has to wonder, does T.C. see himself at all really as taking the same track as Dylan? T.C. says in his writings that he thought that he would probably die very young. Whatever that premonition was, he was right. Dylan, of course, goes on to win, the Nobel Prize, which he doesn't go to get, but he's still touring today, and he's done something like 55 different albums, and he's still current as we speak. One has to wonder what could have happened to T.C. Cannon if he was able to live a full life. However, regardless of how long he lived, which was, again, only to 31, he had an amazing influence. He still has an amazing influence. We're talking about him today. We're thinking about what he's done. Other artists, both native and non-native, look at him for inspiration. I have his paintings, his drawings, behind my, office, in my office, because I love seeing them every day. I see something different and unique from this individual. So when you go see the new Dylan movie, I think if you could just put in the back of your mind, think about T.C. Cannon, right? Think about walking into that studio with his own guitar in the corner, maybe being picked up and played, and the sense that you would have listening to Dylan playing and thinking about the poetry that T.C. Cannon would write and Dylan would do in his own songs. It changed for me, that movie, when I started thinking about T.C. Cannon in his own path, through Vietnam and through going to IAIA and being associated with a big New York gallery. He was about to have a big show when he died. And you know, it's a tragedy, clearly, that he died so young, but it's a gift to all of us that he was who he was and did what he did. And some of that has to be attributed, just something there has to be attributed to creativity that he felt and was inspired by with Bob Dylan's music.